Tonight you're going to eat something out of a box. Maybe a bag, maybe a bowl with a label that lists 20 ingredients you can't pronounce. You won't think twice about it, but the real answer to what your body was built to eat is far stranger than anything in your kitchen. For 300,000 years, your ancestors never opened a package. They never read a label. They never counted a calorie. And yet somehow, they survived long enough to make you. So what were they actually eating? Not what you think. Forget the image of a caveman gnawing on a giant slab of meat by a fire. That picture is mostly wrong. Real hunter-gatherers spent far more time digging, plucking, and cracking than they ever spent hunting. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham, who spent decades studying diet and evolution at Harvard, found something that reshapes the entire story. He argued that the biggest turning point in human eating wasn't meat at all. It was fire. Cooking changed everything. Before fire, your ancestors were eating raw plants, tough roots, unripe fruit, insects, and occasionally scavenged meat. Digesting all of that took enormous energy. Their guts were bigger. Their jaws worked overtime. Their brains stayed small because the body simply didn't have spare energy to grow one. Then something happened. Someone learned to cook. Cooked food is easier to digest. It unlocks more calories from the same plant or animal. Wrangham's research suggests that once cooking became a habit, the human gut could shrink, and all that saved energy went somewhere else. It went to the brain. Slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years, brains grew larger while guts grew smaller. A single behavioral shift, warming food over flame, may have quietly rewired the entire trajectory of the species. Isn't it strange? The moment that made you smart wasn't a moment of thinking, it was a moment of eating. But cooking alone doesn't explain the whole diet. Here's the part most people get wrong. Ancient humans weren't eating steak every day. They were eating whatever the land gave them, and the land rarely gave them meat. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, like the Hadza of Tanzania, found that plant foods often made up more than half of daily calories. Tubers, berries, baobab fruit, honey, when they were lucky enough to find a hive worth raiding. Meat was a bonus, not a guarantee. A successful hunt might feed a group for days, but hunts often failed. Many of them ended in nothing. So the actual survival strategy wasn't built around meat. It was built around gathering, which was slower, steadier, and far more reliable. Women in most hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists did the majority of that gathering. Their work quietly kept entire groups alive on the days when the hunt came home empty-handed. So the diet wasn't feast or famine driven by meat. It was a constant grinding search for anything the land would offer. Roots, nuts, shellfish along the coast, termites in some regions cracked open and eaten on the spot. Your ancestors were not picky. They couldn't afford to be. And here's where it gets stranger. Their diet wasn't the same everywhere. A hunter-gatherer near the Arctic Circle survived almost entirely on fat and meat from seals and fish, because plants barely grew there. A hunter-gatherer near the equator ate mostly fruit, tubers, and insects, because meat was harder to catch in dense forest. There was no single paleo diet. There were hundreds of them, shaped entirely by geography, which means the human body didn't evolve to eat one specific thing. It evolved to eat almost anything. That flexibility, more than any single food, may be the real reason your species survived ice ages, droughts, and mass extinctions that wiped out other species around you. You are, biologically speaking, built to adapt. But something else happened along the way. Something that still shapes your cravings today. Sugar was rare. Painfully rare. The only reliable source was wild fruit, usually only available for a few weeks a year, and honey, which was dangerous to collect and often guarded by very angry bees. Because sugar was so scarce, and because it meant fast, usable energy, the human brain evolved to treat it as something worth chasing. That's why, right now, in a world overflowing with sugar in every direction, your brain still reacts to it the way it did 50,000 years ago. Like it's rare. Like it's precious. Like you should eat as much as you can while it's available, because tomorrow it might be gone. Except tomorrow, it's never gone. It's in the vending machine. It's in the drive-thru. It's on every shelf of every store you walk into. Your ancient brain is still preparing for a famine that stopped happening thousands of years ago. The same goes for fat and salt. Both were once rare and valuable, essential for survival, and hard to find in consistent amounts. So your brain rewards you for eating them. Strongly. Immediately. That reward system wasn't designed by a food company. It was designed by tens of thousands of years of scarcity. Modern food companies didn't invent your cravings. They just found the buttons that evolution installed and pressed them constantly. There's a researcher whose work makes this even clearer. Psychologist Paul Rosen, who studied the psychology of food and discussed for decades, found that human food preferences are shaped by a mix of biology and culture layered on top of each other. Some cravings are ancient and nearly universal, like the pull toward sugar and fat. Others are learned entirely from the environment you grow up in. That means your exact cravings, the specific foods you find comforting, were partly written into you by evolution and partly written into you by your childhood, your culture, your family dinner table. Two forces stacked on top of each other, deciding what you reach for when you're stressed, or bored, or simply hungry. Now here's the twist that changes how you should think about all of this. Ancient humans weren't healthier because they were eating some perfect, magical diet. They were healthier, in certain ways, because their environment forced moderation. Food wasn't always available. Hunts failed. Seasons changed. Droughts happened. Their bodies evolved cravings for scarce, valuable foods precisely because those foods were hard to get. The problem isn't that your cravings are broken. The problem is that the world changed faster than your biology could. Your brain still runs software built for scarcity, but you're living in an environment of permanent abundance. Sugar, fat, and salt are no longer rare rewards. They're constant, cheap, and everywhere. The gap between what your body expects and what your world provides is exactly where a lot of modern struggles with food begin. This isn't a story about willpower. It's a story about mismatch. So the next time you reach for something sweet without even thinking about it, that's not a personal failure. That's 50,000 years of evolutionary programming firing exactly the way it was designed to in a world that no longer matches the one it was built for. Tonight, when you eat something out of a box, remember this. Somewhere underneath the packaging, the flavoring, and the convenience, your body is still asking the same question it asked for hundreds of thousands of years. Is this rare? Is this valuable? Should I eat as much as I can while I still can? The food changed. The question never did.